Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Muchi Veda Vibhagine Vyomavda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatoshimaham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome. So we carry on our Panchadasi, chapter 6. I'm going to make that. I'm going to split the inquiry into existence, what we have done until the end of chapter 5. So the 5 chapters, which most often is what they teach us, Panchadasi. And the chapter 6, I'm beginning with another project, with another image, and I'm going to organize that on the YouTube for the few of us. Yeah. But anyhow, we are entering today the verse 25th. Yeah. And the page is the page 441. Yeah. And it says here, under the delusion of mutual superimposition, the Jiva cannot discriminate and cannot realize that he is not Jiva, but he is Kutastha. This non-discrimination is beginningless, and it's known as the primal Nescience. Nescience is the primal ignorance. Huh? It's synonymous of ignorance, I assume. Okay. So here we come back to revising the same concept of this power of delusion, the veiling power, this Avarana, that causes a mutual superimposition that somehow we understood in our previous last class, that is the self. We see in our chart here, the Kutastha is the self, is Atman. And then on the right side, it shows that it appears and manifests physically as the Jiva, the individual soul, appearing in the body-mind complex. So we have Kutastha, which is the self, which is Brahman, the absolute consciousness, manifest as the consciousness appearing, as the self, the I, the Aham. And this self, this Atman, this Aham, appears as well as the body-mind complex, which is the Jiva, the Jiva, or the individual soul, manifest as the body-mind complex. So it's the conditioned individual, is reflected consciousness conditioned by its vasanas. And then we have the Kutastha, which is the conditioned individual, but in spite of its condition, it knows that I am limitless consciousness. So it's said to be a mutual superimposition or mutual ignorance in the sense that the self appearing as the Atman, the self, the individual Atman, the infinite Atman appearing as the individual self, or the absolute self appearing as the individual self, somehow superimpose this Atman on the Jiva Atman. And then the Jiva Atman, on the other hand, it can easily superimpose itself on the self. It says like I am the body mind, but I am the self, and then the self gets mixed up with the Jiva gets mixed up with the self. It heard that there is such a thing as the self, but somehow sees the self as something other than itself. And then there is this mutual confusion, this mutual ignorance, this mutual superimposition. Then the Jiva cannot discriminate and it cannot realize that the Jiva is not really the Jiva, but it is Kutastha. So the Jiva is the one in trouble. I mean, apparently the self appears as the conditioned individual. It's not really in trouble, but the moment that it projects itself and takes itself to be the Jiva, and then it suffers. And then being suffering, it wants to remove this element of suffering. And then it starts them searching for this freedom, gets in contact with the scriptures, and then hears that there is such a thing as the self, and the self is free and limitless. And then it wants to have the self and superimpose itself on the self, but it's superimposed in a wrong manner, in the sense that my body-mind complex is Kutastha, is the limitless Brahman. It has to understand in which way the Jiva is Kutastha and in which way it is not. As we know, in its substantial material energy matter level, the Jiva is not Kutastha, but in its spirit, in its essence, in its true nature, it is Kutastha, which is a manifestation of the absolute Brahman appearing as the Jivan Mukta, or the Kutastha, as said here. So under the delusion, there is this mutual superimposition. Therefore, the Jiva cannot discriminate and cannot realize that the Jiva is but Kutastha. This non-discrimination is beginningless and is known as the primal ignorance. So it is an ignorance that is beginningless. This is a very difficult concept for beginning people and people getting in contact with the Upanishads. It has a little trouble to understand that there is an ignorance, and this ignorance, it was not beginning anywhere in time, and it was not originated by anyone in particular. Okay, it is a beginningless, and we're gonna look more and more in the following verse to understand better the nature of this beginningless ignorance. Is the primal ignorance. So Swamiji goes about saying a few words here. It says that the author here, Vidyaranya, mentions adhyasa, anyonya, adhyasa, and leaves it to us to for elaboration. If you are impatient, you can go through Adhyasya Bhasya of Brahma Sutra. You don't understand that Kutastha, which is right before your eyes, or right behind your eyes, right underneath your nose, So the Jiva does not understand at the beginning this Kutastha, okay, the self. So what is the self? I haven't seen, heard, smelled, and touched the self. So it says that you don't understand the Kutastha, and the Kutastha is right there, underneath, or within, or enlivening you. Jiva does not understand its own nature, Svarupa, and its higher nature, Brahman, consciousness, Satchitananda. It looks all around except below, or behind, or beyond, or within. I mean, there are no words to describe this Avarana Shakti, this misunderstanding in regards to what is the most obvious thing. But being that subtle is most of the case it's overseen, overlooked. So it looks around for the self, and the self is just there doing the looking around and not really understanding, not really realizing that this is my svarupa, my true, my essence, nature. At any time in life, it does not discriminate and understand what is its true nature. The very fact that the birth, Janima here, I forgot, because long time I don't hear the audios of Swami Paramarthananda. Since we have the transcriptions, I'm losing a little bit the pronunciation. The very fact that new births come, the rebirth continues, is proof that we have not understood this reality, and that is due to avidya. So there are two concepts, and Swamiji is going to bring, and this is delightful because many times I have made some mentions of the distinction between Avarana and avidya, and here we're going to enjoy going into the subtle difference between these two concepts. Okay, so the fact that we are reincarnating again and again, it's a proof, it's an indication that we have not understood our real nature, the reality, and that is due to this ignorance, this avidya operating the mind of the Jiva Atma. So what it means to say, I mean, if we again and again we reincarnate, it means that we haven't learned certain lessons uh, uh, here. We come here to grow, to evolve, to get knowledge, understanding. And the fact that we keep coming back, it means that we are still not complete with our passage here, and that is due to avidya. This avidya is anadi. It is without beginning, anadi, and it is without origin. It's originalless. It is beginningless aviveka. So it is a lack of discrimination that is anadi, is without a beginning. Okay? And this brings about the mixing up, and this mixing up, this mutual superimposition is called mula vidya, or fundamental or basic ignorance. So we have now avidya being presented as with two different terms, and we're going to see beginning, this original fundamental, this mixing up, this beginningless inability to discriminate and see, to determine, to discern. This beginningless aviveka is the mixing up, which is present as mula vidya, the basic, the most fundamental, original ignorance. Okay, it is Avarana Shakti producing a phenomenon called avidya that is presented here as mula vidya is the original one. It has every jiva comes here and suffers of this fundamental, original, primordial avidya, mentioned, referred to as mula avidya. Not recognizing Kutastha, the self nature of the Jiva Atman, not recognizing Kutastha as distinct from the Jiva in its substantial body-mind construct nature is called mula vidya. So in every human being suffers of this mula vidya, because it takes many births until we come to hear, that there is such a thing as the self, which is not the body, which is not the mind. How many births now we go until we get to this good news, and then from there on we need to do some work to remove this fundamental basic mula vidya, and then we're going to go in other aspects of this power to hide our true nature and to hide the experience, the knowledge, the experience of our fundamental real nature as limitless Satchitananda. So not recognizing Kutastha as different from the body-mind complex is called mula vidya. The following verse says that this ignorance or avidya has two functions. So as we know, let me read the verse first. This ignorance or this avidya has two functions. It works as Avarana, the power to conceal, and Viksepa, the power to project. The power of Avarana creates such ideas as Kutastha shines not and exists not. Okay, so the Avarana is going to bring the denial of the self. Okay, people live before they come in contact with these revelations from the Vedas. It has no idea that there is such a thing as the self. But the most they accept the fact that there is a body and there is the mind. But when you talk to them in terms of the self, they mix up, they superimpose the mind on the self. And that is the one aspect of this superimposition from the Jiva to the self, because they take the mind to be the self and they say, oh, yeah, the self, I know, it's the mind. No, it's not the mind. Huh? So this Avarana power is responsible for such ideas, which negates Kutastha, the self, gives no credit to Kutastha, never heard of Kutastha. If they hear that, they think that, this guy is delirating or something like that. Such ideas as Kutastha does not shine, and Kutastha does not even exist. Where did you got this idea from? Huh? So this is the samsari, the aviveka, the one who lives under the spell of this avarana that produce this mula vidya, this total ignorance. I'm ignorance of the existence of the self, which is different from the ignorance that says, yes, I heard there is a self. I didn't quite understand yet. I didn't quite identify myself as the limitless self. I'm suffering of avidya, but it's no longer the mula avidya. It's not the original ignorance that you are totally ignorant and you are not even aware of your ignorance. Huh? So gradually, Vidyaranya is progressing with his teachings. Mula Vidya has two energies, and we know one is the Avarana, the concealing, and the other is the projecting, the Viksepa. Avidya here means Mula Vidya, total ignorance. It exists with twofold functions. It exists within twofold powers. Now Vidyaranya defines Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. He's going to unfold these twofold functions, which just anticipating it exists in the mental level and in the verbal level. So now Vidyaranya is going to define Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti. Avarana Shakti is the power which generates particular thoughts and particular expressions or words. Okay? Whichever power of avidya generates particular thoughts and expressions is called mula vidya. Yeah? So we have this avarana shakti. It's going to produce a particular thought and words, expressions. And those thoughts and expressions have negation. Okay, we're going to see here. A thought and an expression dealing with negation of existence and the experience of certain thing, even if that thing is before you, is total ignorance. Okay, so there is something that's right there before you, and you negate the existence, you negate the experience. So this is the case of most samsaris. Okay, we live within this limitless self. We experience the self, but the people suffering from mulavidya, they have this mulavidya, this ignorance expressed in two levels. I express the concept and I express the experience. Okay, I negate the existence and I negate the experience of object. For example, I have a glass of water here, but suddenly I have a total mula vidya operating, and then I say, I don't see the glass with water, and I don't experience the glass with water. Okay? It's a total ignorance. The existence of Kutastha and the experience of Kutastha, the self, both of them are negate at two levels. And for the total ignorant, okay? So at two levels, the existence of Kutastha and the experience of Kutastha, we have two aspects there. I'm negating, I'm ignorant on the in regards to existence, in regard to experience. Yeah? And then I negate in two levels. One is the verbal level, and the other is the subtle level. So I hear that and I say, no, no, this does not exist. And then furthermore, I will say, no, no, don't tell me this again because it does not exist. I haven't seen, touched, and smelled the self. Okay, so this, the existence of Kutastha and the experience both are negated in two levels, thought level and verbal level. That is negation. That is the negation of the self, of the Atma, and the experience also, and that is all the negation of the experience of the self, of the Atma. This Miseda is not only twofold, but Miseda takes also at two levels. So have you seen the meaning of this word Miseda that I forgot?
I think it just means denial.
Yeah, this denial is not only twofold, but it takes at two levels. Okay, so I know that Brahman does not exist. Yeah? I know Brahman exists, but I don't get Brahman Anubhava. And here one gets Brahman experience. So I'm gonna read it again. This denial is not only twofold, okay, on the mental and verbal level, but it takes two levels. Yeah? One level is I know Brahman exists, but I don't understand Brahman Anubhava. I forgot the meaning of Anubhava as well. Let me see here. I had opened. You remember Anubhava?
Experience, I think.
Experience, yeah, exactly. It makes sense. I know Brahman exists, but I don't have the experience of Brahman. And here, one gets Brahman experience. Yeah, it's self-explanatory here. So we have these two levels. We can be totally ignorant, or we can get in contact and know something about Brahman, but yet I am negating the experience of Brahman. Negation of the existence and negation of experience. So there is a certain level of avidya, which is not the mula vidya, in which I know that there is such a thing as Kutastha. There is something as Brahman or the self, but yet, I negate. I am that Brahman. I negate that it is my true nature, and I experience it within every experience of mine. So we negate not the concept, but we negate the practical experience aham brahmasmi, the total understanding, irrefutable experience that I am that Brahman, but not objectively as we know, but as Brahman. So one is at pratyaya level, verbal level, and the other is thought level, and the other is at verbal level. What is this? Okay. One is at the verbal level, thought level, and the other is the expression level. All these four, and then he brings those four aspects of this Avidya. Here presents in Sanskrit, are generated by Avarana Shakti. Okay, so there are four levels there. It's a ignorance. Let's go back here. It's ignorance present itself as mula vidya, which is the power to conceal and the power of Viksepa. And then we've seen that there is two other levels, which is the Avarana, the power of Avarana, manifests itself as thought and as verbally and thought level, which is going to generate thoughts and expression. A thought and expression dealing with the negation of something. And then when I negate something, I'm negating the Avarana we are seeing here, the Avarana Shakti one. When we negate what? I'm negating at thought level and verbal level. I'm negating at two levels. I'm negating that this does not exist, and this is I cannot experience. I deny the existence, deny the experience. And then here we're going to see that there is also a certain Avarana operating, which does not negate the concept, the notion, the idea that there is Brahman, there is the self, there is Kutastha, but denies I am this Kutastha, I am this Brahman. I deny the existence, experiential or direct understanding or acceptance of my nature as Kutastha. Okay, one is pratyaya level and the other is expression level. The twofold negation at thought and speech level is called avrit. This power to generate is called Avarana Shakti. So Avarana Shakti is going to express twofold negation at thought and at speech level. Okay, so I negate the existence and I negate the experience twofold, either on the thought level and or on the speech level. So these are the four aspects of this Avarana operating. Thought level, verbal level, negating the existence and negate the experience of Kutastha. But Vedanta says that Kutastha is Sakshi Chaitanya, limitless consciousness. And Vedanta says that the existence and the experience of consciousness cannot be questioned at any time, because all the time this Sakshi Chaitanya is experienced by us. And in fact, everything is experienced because of this Sakshi Chaitanya. So that's where we come to Vedanta. Vedanta is going to say that the self, the Atma, cannot be negated, either as existence and either as not impossible to be experienced. Of course, not as something other than the Kutastha, but it is the nature of the Kutastha, the self, the Atma, Brahman, the absolute Brahman. None of these can be questioned at any time, because of at all times this consciousness is experienced by us. The fact, every experience of every object in the world is experienced or through or because or by the grace of Sakshi Chaitanya, consciousness, without which we cannot experience duality, of course. Even though Sakshi Chaitanya is always ever experienced, the ignorant, the one suffering from Mula-vidya, boldly says that Sakshi Chaitanya does not exist and therefore cannot be experienced. And furthermore, the only solution is I have to go to Nirvikalpa Samadhi to experience the Atma. Here Swamiji elaborates a little bit more at the distinction between knowledge and experience, self-knowledge and the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. So if there is no such a thing as consciousness, as Atma, as Chaitanya, Sachitananda or Brahman, I deny the existence and I deny the experience. The only thing left to me is to go into the experience of emptiness, nothingness, which is the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And then I say this emptiness is the only self there is, but it comes and goes. In spite of Kutastha, Bana, and Anubhava, this fellow says that Kutastha is not there. Kutastha, Bana, and Anubhava, you know those two expressions, Lee?
I think they're very similar. Yeah, Bana maybe meaning perceptual stuff, and Anubhava experience. I think they're very similar.
Okay, in spite of that, the fellow will say that Kutastha is not there. This Kutastha is self-evident. So in spite of the self-evident presence of Kutastha, And in spite of Anubhava, it could be related to the fact that it is self-existing and it's self-experiencing. In spite of this self-evidence, the fellow will say that Kutastha is not there. This situation is caused by Mula Vidya or Maya, okay, on the macro level, this Avarana projecting this ignorance, no? Is caused by Mula Vidya or Maya. This is due to this Avarana Shakti. This situation is called a vritti. Okay, Sloka 27. If a wise man asks, if you guys have anything to say or want to elaborate or have any questions, please interrupt me, okay? If a wise man asks an ignorant man about Kutastha, the ignorant man will say there is no such a thing as the self. It does not exist. It does not manifest. It does not exist. Thus, he feels and says. So, if a wise man asks such a thing to about Kutastha, which is not really, how you say, Vedanta does not really recommend. It's not recommended that we go to some sadhus and ask, so have you seen the self or are you in touch with the self and so on? But if a wise man would by chance approach a man and about Kutastha, the ignorant will say there is no such a thing as Kutastha. It does not exist, it does not manifest, and does not, it cannot be, I don't experience and I don't see the existence. It has never been here. So Swami Vidyaranya goes about saying that here, both Avidya and Avarana Shakti are distinctly present. Very nice. Let's see this. And now he's going to begin to elaborate this subtle distinction. Avidya is an ignorance in regards to the Jiva, yeah, Jiva, the individual soul embodied. Here, both Avidya and Avarana Shakti are going to be presented in its subtle distinction, let's say. The difference between them is very subtle, but it's shown distinctly. An ignorant person does not know Kutastha, does not know the self. The ignorance which is there at all time is called Mula Vidya, yeah? The original beginningless ignorance. He does not know that there is such a thing as Kutastha, the self, which is not the body, which is not the mind. Yeah? Even though ignorance is there with him at all time, he does not know that he is ignorant. So he's not aware that there is an ignorance because that knowledge was never brought to his or her attention. So that is the bliss, let's say, of being totally ignorant. So you don't have the question, oh my God, now I have a problem here. I need to figure out if there is anything other than the body and the mind. So it's trouble. I mean, you say, oh, no, leaving myself alone with my ignorance. For to me, there is only the body and there is the mind, and that's it. So the ignorance which is there all the time is called Mula Vidya. Even though the ignorance is there, he does not know his ignorance. Not only he is ignorant, but he also does not think that he is ignorant. Okay? So the ignorance is not invoked. It did not come to the surface. Okay? It was not brought up. The ignorance is totally hidden. It's underneath. It's totally unconscious, that ignorance. So the ignorance is not invoked at any time. The invocation of this ignorance comes only when the yoni comes and raises these questions in the mind of an ignorant person. So usually it is the ignorant person hears, the rumors that there is something more than the body mind, and then goes to the guru, and then the guru is going to say, yes, there is such a thing as Kutastha, the self, the Atma, which is something other than the mind and the body. So when this piece of information is invoked, and then what is doing? The ignorance of the individual is being involved. First I said, I'm going to look for an expert. I go to a guru, and guru is going to say, yes, there is such a thing as the self, which is not the body and the mind. And then the ignorance of the person is fully exposed. It came to the surface. Okay, I have a problem with ignorance here. I never had this problem before, but now, I came across this fundamental ignorance. An invocation of ignorance comes when the knowledge, the yoni, raises these questions in the mind of the anyani. The anyani is ignorant of the self, and he has mula vidya, the most primordial ignorance that does not even come to the surface as ignorance. It's totally unconscious, this ignorance. It's called mula vidya. Suppose a wise man asks Anyani, do you know Kutastha Chaitanya, this self-consciousness, Satchitananda? Do you know? When the questions asked, then an event happens. This Anyani thinks in his mind, because the question is asked, and when he thinks, two things happen. At the mental level, he thinks that our Kutastha, and thinks, I have not experienced Kutastha at all. Therefore, Kutastha does not exist. So, on the mental level, immediately, the person wants to know if there is Kutastha, and then intuitively, instinctively, one says, have I experienced that? No. Therefore, it does not exist. Okay? So Anyani is going to think and say, come to the term that because I have never experienced Kutastha, Kutastha does not exist. Okay? This did not happen when he was doing his work. When he was going about doing his life, the Avarana Shakti is activated only when I ask the question, and that vrit is tattva bana miseda. So it says that just before was not happened to him. He was going about his life. So this Avarana Shakti was not activated until then. When the question is presented to him, only then this Avarana, this ignorance is activated and become conscious. And then he says here, but the other person is standing there. So there is one person who received this message by the Yoni, which was, so have you seen, do you know Kutastha? So have you experienced, of its existence? And then the ignorant will think and say, no, I have never experienced, therefore I deny. There is no such a thing. But there is another person standing nearby. The wise man does not know what happens in the other person's mind. Then he uses the Tattva Bana Miseda also. The generation of Tattva Bana Miseda, Vritti, and Vakya is activated only when a wise man raises the question. Before asking the question, though was there in his mind, the generating power is called Avarana Shakti. Okay, Shakti. So before the question, the thought and the words was there in his mind. The generating power is called Avarana Shakti. Then after the generation of thought, there is a generation of words. He verbally express his avidya. This is called Avarana, and the expression is called Avarana Shakti. So this is called Avarana, total ignorance, And the expression of his ignorance is called Avarana Shakti. And this is called Mula Vidya. And then he will raise possible objection more in the next class. So I don't know if in the next verse we're gonna find further explanation of this passage here, because it was not very clear to me. The fact that things are clear at certain point to understand this fundamental ignorance, the ignorance that is totally unconscious, and then the Yanni comes and mentions that, and then that ignorance comes to the surface, and then he presents the example of was in man raising the question in the mind of someone, and this person will say, I have never experienced the self, therefore the self does not exist. Okay, so we have this ignorance that was consciously activate in the man, in the mind of the person. Now, before asking the question, though, was there in his mind. This ignorance was there, but it was not surfaced yet. The generating power is called Avarana Shakti, and then after the generation of thought, there is a generation of the words as well. But what I want to bring here to ask the help of you guys is that the Varana Shakti is activated when I ask the question, and that vritti da da da. But the other person is standing there. I think it refers to the same person, huh, Lynn?
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So this Avarana is the covering of the Brahman. So that covering is there in all sentient beings, like even a coyote or a bird, the covering is there. But is the avidya what happens in the expression of ignorance through the body mind of a jiva, of a human jiva? This distinction is still a bit unclear to me.
Yeah, and it's going to become clear to us as we unfold the following the other verse. Okay, so there is one fundamental energy, which is the concealing power. Okay, and this produces a certain ignorance. Okay, in every sense. Okay, Avarana is going to conceal the nature of Kutastha, but it conceals all other knowledge that it belongs to Ishvara. Okay, it is a certain power. So the distinction between this Avarana Shakti and the Avidya is going to be unfolded with subtle difference also, Mula Vidya and totally unconscious Avidya, or Mavidya that knows that I am ignorant, but I consider the possibility that this is something that I can know and I can confirm even by experience. All of that is going to be seen. In the past, I overheard in some audios, and I have a clue, I had a certain understanding of the subtle distinction between Avarana Shakti and Avidya. All I had understood so far at the time is that Avarana Shakti is this power that causes this ignorance. And ignorance has two aspects. One is the inability to see what is, and then a projection, attempt to define something that I did not properly understood. Okay, from the standpoint of one's own identity. Okay, which is the most fundamental purpose of our births or incarnations, is to finally ask this fundamental question: what am I? And then naturally, the individual goes through this difficulty to see the most obvious, and the natural tendency is to find a solution, find an answer, and then unavoidably everybody ends up defining oneself as the body, as the mind. So it is a varana and projection, concealing, inability, you know, a non-apprehension and then a misapprehension or projection. So this is the texture of this avidya operating the human being. Okay, now we analyze from the standpoint of Avarana. Okay, and then we're gonna understand that this Avarana is this fundamental power to conceal, and the avidya is the effect it has in the Jiva Atma, the way the Jiva Atma experience this fundamental, this ignorance, which is Avarana Shakti, which is going to conceal knowledge. For some reason, somehow, we are born here with a very limited intellect, not only in regards to self-knowledge, but knowledge about things that are happening in the Dharma field. Okay, so this is Avarana, which can be translated as excess of tamoguna in our Vedantic language. So we have a reflecting medium which produces this reflected consciousness, the human consciousness. And this human consciousness is somehow conditioned by too much tamas and rajas, although there is enough sattva there to produce the ability, the power of knowingness, of know things and ultimately try to know what you are. So all the play of these two aspects of avidya, which is Varana, Viksepa, operating in the human mind, we're going to see very nicely. I haven't read all the subsequent verse, but I'm positive that we're going to come out in the next class totally well resolved in regards to the distinction between Avarana, Viksepa, and Avidya, Mula Vidya, Avidya, conscious Avidya, and so on. Let's be patient. But I think you are right, and I just got it now when I read for the second time that this, the other person here, the other person is the person standing before the Yanni. Yanni says that presents the idea that is there such a thing as Kutastha? And then the person will say, no, I don't experience any self here, therefore I deny the existence and the experience. Okay, so this Avarana Shakti then was activated when the Yanni asked the question to the Anyani, and now the Anyani say, no, I mean, you say that I am ignorant, maybe, but I don't experience and I do not know. Okay, so and then it says that this Avarana now is activated into the mind of the person. Okay, and the person is standing there. The wise man does not know what happens in the other man's mind, which is the person standing there. Now I was misreading, thinking that there were two persons, and he was creating a more complex analogy that maybe would be better explained in the next verse. But no, it's always about the Anyani standing there and having the other man still there, and the Yanni cannot know exactly what's happening in its mind. Then he used Tattva, Bana, Nitheda, Vakya. The generation of thought is activated only when the wise man raises the question. So there are a lot of Sanskrit sayings here that makes it a little bit more difficult because I don't like to dig much into Sanskrit as long as I understand the concept. If I don't understand the concept, I always ask the help of Lin, our expert in Sanskrit. So the main thing here is understand the concept, the teachings. Okay, let's go to now he explains a little bit better, differently, from a different slight angle. This verse 27. So on the class 8-9, page 443, at the very bottom there, here Vidyaranya points out that we do not know Kutastha. And this ignorance he calls Mula Vidya. This alone, this ignorance has two aspects. It has the Avarana Shakti and Viksepa Shakti. Here he brings Viksepa into the equation. So this Mula Vidya, this beginningless ignorance, it works in two levels. And we can see it very clearly operating in our minds because we know when our mind is more tamasic, we have difficult to understand things, simple things around us. And once our mind becomes too rajasic, we also have difficulty to understand because the mind becomes like that. You understand? It's a little bit anxious, stressed, and it's in a mode that somehow compromise the intellectual function of the Jiva. So two versions of this Mula Vidya. It's produced by Avarana Shakti and Viksepa Shakti, which on the macro level are the two powers that project the universe. And in the micro level, many times I had this subtle confusion. What is the difference, to be more specific about this confusion? What is the difference between Avarana and Viksepa and and Rajaguna and Tamaguna? So this Avidya, which is distinct from Avarana, it somehow impacts the human mind by excess of Rajaguna and Tamoguna. Okay, so when my mind is too tamasic, I have the side byproduct or side effect of Avarana, the concealing power, which manifests as this dense energy, conditioning my mind so that my knowingness, my knowing ability is diminished. You understand? So there are all these subtle distinctions. I am confident that are going to be clearly understood. Avarana is the concealing version of ignorance. Okay, Avarana is the concealing version. Viksepa is here. He presents another expression that I haven't heard him saying before. We hear about concealing power and projecting power, so on. But distorting power, it's very interesting because, like Shimayananda used to say, the non-apprehension is going to bring about the misapprehension, a distortion of reality. So I have this impulse, to understand what am I. I want to know what am I. The notions I have about myself kept changing through my entire life, and now I want to know what am I. So what is the purpose of coming here if I do not know what am I? So this attempt to know what am I is happening there due to excess of Avarana first and Viksepa. Viksepa is going to define the self, but in a distorted way. You understand? Distorting version, distorting power. This is it's a different kind of ignorance that you almost see the robe, but you still superimpose the snake on the rope. And sometimes you see the snake in your robe, but then again, there is a distortion of reality in there. Avarana is the concealing, and and Viksepa is distorting. One is the veiling, and the other is the distorting power or version. Vidyaranya now explains the Avarana version. He says the concealing or concealment version is avidya, is in the form of thought and verbal expression. He says the concealing power, or the concealing version of this avidya is in the form of thought and words. It is in the form of a particular type of thought in a particular type of speech, which is denial, negation. Okay, so what kind of thought manifests this concealing power is I don't see the glass of water as I was presenting, and I don't experience the glass of water. Okay, so this Avarana is going to conceal. It's this concealing power, and it's going to produce a thought and an expression, a verbal expression. And the characteristic of the thought and expression is denial, negation of Kutastha, negation of the self. Huh? Negation and thought. Negation of what? The negation of the experience and the negation of the existence. Because if I don't experience, it's because it does not exist, which is one of the most absurd statements. But most human beings somehow guide their lives by this notion, by this philosophy. I only believe in what I experience. Okay, if I don't experience, it does not exist. Most people in the spiritual world, it says, no, I only believe in what I experience. I have to experience something, and they go to the extent to say, they don't say I think, I determine, I discern. No, they say I feel, I feel, I feel, I feel, has this experiential connotation, and people are guided by experience, by feelings. So they are going to deny what they do not experience, what they do not feel. So appears as negation. No, I don't experience, and it's impossible to experience the self as something. I'm going to feel something in regards to the self. Like James often says, it does not feel like anything. You understand? It's just what you are, and by which you're going to have feelings and emotion in respects to what you experience objectively. But you cannot experience what you are. It does not have a touch, does not have a smell, a texture, okay, and it does not have a feel. Yeah? Feelings come with our interaction with the objective world of objects. So it appears as a negation. Yeah? Negations of what? Negations of the experience. And because I don't experience, I negate the existence. Huh? So what is the final definition of Avarana? What the final definition of Avarana is Vastu sattva bana nidesha da. A thought and a word which negates the existence and the experience of something is called avarana. A thought, your word that negates an existence of something, even if something before my eyes, very dense, very tangible, if somehow I negate the existence and the experience of something, this is called avarana. Okay, this is one version of this ignorance. Expressed ignorance is called avarana. Okay, so I don't experience and I negate fully, so I am expressing avarana. It's the fundamental ignorance called avarana, which is present as the ignorance expressed here. Will that quickly tell him? Excuse me, just for a moment. Somebody's knocking here. We have an apartment in town here because Silva did not like to live in the countryside, and I'm here during Christmas, and the neighbor here is calling her. Let me go back here. Okay. And this is is called Avarana. An ignorant person does not know the Kutastha, and his ignorance is called Avidya. He does not know of the ignorance, and he does not talk about the ignorance. And he is fully ignorance, and that is Mula Vidya, as we have seen before. Only when he goes and asks about the self, he knows of his ignorance. This ignorance comes to surface, okay? So it became alive. He is aware of his ignorance once the idea there is the reason such a thing as the self, okay? So, and then he's going to think about that ignorance and eventually express the ignorance. The Avarana is presented in the second line. Nabati it's the thought and the expression of ignorance. The subtle difference of Avarana and Pratyaya is explained in detail. Yeah? Now an objection will be raised in the next verse, the verse 28. I will just read this and we're gonna leave this verse 28 for our next class, which is an objection. The opponent may raise such a question as how did the self-luminous Kutastha come to have ignorance? And without it, how could there an obscuring or veiling power? Such arguments are falsified by one's direct experience. So now we're going to go into even greater fun, because when we see the objections to the teachings, it's just exposing even subconscious doubts of some of us that Vedanta in its style and presenting, bringing to the surface those doubts allows us to clear subconscious or unconscious doubts. So how did the self-luminous self-consciousness, Kutastha, come to have ignorance? So how come Brahman, which is absolute consciousness, free from knowledge and ignorance, how come it manifests itself as the Kutastha, which the self in the micro, and experience this ignorance and superimpose itself, the self, the Atma, into the Jiva Atma, the body-mind complex. So how that is possible? So how did this self-luminous, self-knowing, self-evident, self, Kutastha, come to suffer from this ignorance? And without it, how could there be obscuring? So without the self, how could there be obscuring? Or without it, how could there be obscuring? The self, without the self-luminous consciousness, how could it be obscuring? So this is one of those uh, objections, and it's the most fundamental, the most common. So how can Brahman or the self, all-knowing, self-knowing, somehow apparently appear as the Kutastha or the Jiva Atma, and then suffer from Avidya? How something that has full knowledge of itself and provides Ishvara with the knowledge of all universe in the past, present, and future, how can this consciousness appear as the Jiva Atma and suffer from Avidya? So it's a lovely discussion, and we know that somehow, unfortunately, Mr. Maya is going to be blaming for that. But we're going to see that in more details coming Thursday. Okay? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, Lynn. We meet again soon. And
Thank you, Arlinda.
namaste. Bye-bye.
Namaste.
Okay. Okay, now soon I'm gonna have a call from